All right. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Yes. Yes. Okay. I think y'all can hear me. Just want to make sure because I have my special mic on, so I wanted to make sure y'all can hear me. Um. All right. Hey Barbie. Hey, I'm Duff. Hi. Yes, Kurt. Perfect. All right. So study group time. It's our study group time. So for those of you tuning in, this is our study group hour, which means I focus on a book and I read and I stop, give commentary, respond to some of the questions posed in the book or what comes up there. So yeah, so that's what I do. And then, then I come back over and I look at what you guys. No, it's fine. Actually, it feels great inside the house. These houses are really designed well as far as like maintaining the heat. I actually enjoy the heat. In Houston, it's always hot as hell. And so where I'm from, it's always hot as hell. So the idea of snow and cold is like, and I love the winter time. I really do love the winter time. It's one of those, want to bundle up or get some hot tea or something. So, or hot chocolate. In Houston, you're like trying to have hot chocolate and you're sweating, your back's sweating, all your crevices are, all wet and you're like, that's what it's like in Houston. Every now and then you get lucky and it gets cold and then freezes over and then everybody runs out of power and almost dies. And every now and then you get lucky and get to go through that. But aside from that, which is not a very often thing in Houston, I remember when I was a kid and it would get cold because whenever we would go to my Aunt Melba's house, they had one of those like one of those heaters that have the little like what is it? Those little like clay things in the inside, and you could see the heat coming through. It was a gas heater, but it was set up like that, and they would always be standing in front of it just because her house was a little more like chilly, and so they would have the heater on, etc. So I remembered that when I was growing up. So that's how cold it used to get. It don't get like that on a regular basis. So it's just one of those things. Yes. Oh, good for you for doing that, Brittany. Good for you for doing that. Reading is like a lost art. It doesn't matter. You don't have to read perfectly. Just the fact that you can read is the point, right? So the fact that you're teaching your kids that and getting them on hooked on the idea of that, nowadays kids in this younger generations, like they don't want to read. Like they're like, I have to like sit and concentrate for a long time to get the point. Yeah, you do. That's what it's about. It's about being a part of the journey in the process. It's an experience, and you can't get it all in like a 30-second video. You can't get it all in like a 30-second clip. You need to like dig deep. You can't get it all from like, doing your own research online, that's not really based on any factual information. Just because someone's saying it doesn't mean that it's true. So you got to do your research, so it's important to read. And I wish that reading was more of a focus or that it was just more of a thing because, I think that's part of the tragedy, I think, at this point. So, but yeah, so we're reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, right? So we are on page 129. We're almost halfway through the book, actually. 129, and it's The Pain Body, chapter 5. And so, again, for those of you who are tuning in, who are wanting a reading, um, um, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great, yeah. Sweaty. Lose. I enjoy reading. Time is my issue. But if you spend 15 minutes each day, you will finish pretty quickly a book. Yeah, that is very true. Like, even if you, like, I try to read, at least 30 minutes to an hour in the morning. I go through periods where there are times where my brain is just, it's too much. I got too much going on, too much on my mind, and I want to distract myself. And so sometimes I'll use reading as a way to distract myself and focus on something else for a little bit, just because I don't want to have to like think about the other things that I have to deal with or on my plate. It's like, too much going on. So I use it as a distraction. There are some times though where I'm just overwhelmed and I have to I can't do extra. And for me, sometimes reading can be extra. Watching the news and caring about what's going on is extra. Sometimes it's like, I got enough on my plate. I got to focus on what's right in front of me because I don't have extra battery power or bandwidth to really do much more. And it's about knowing your limits, right? And in this industry, especially with the work that I do, you definitely have to know your limits. But I love reading. I try to do it every single morning because there's always something to learn. I have a problem where I I don't always like read a book to pick it up and read it from beginning to end. Sometimes I'll pick it up and I'll read some of it and then I'll put it down for a while and then I'll pick up another book so it's like eating at like a buffet. Sometimes I'm like, well, I don't want to eat all of the chicken in the chicken buffet. Sometimes I want maybe some biscuits today. Maybe I kind of want to like mess around and get a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's how I do it with my reading. And then eventually I'll end up finishing what I need to read. So. Anyways, for those of you tuning in, no personal readings. Let me write it in, yeah, because I already know Ray's gonna be all over me about it. So, no study group, no personal readings. All right. Oh, reading. It says readings. Come on, Ferny, get it together. It's just a couple of letters. Okay, there it goes. And then let me pin it. Perfect. I see I have to focus on that one book until I'm finished. I get so invested in knowing the ending. Yeah. I mean, I most of what I read is nonfiction, or it's historical, or it's spiritual, or it's religious in some way. I don't know why. This is what I read mostly of. Every now and then I have nonfiction books that read like stories that are like fiction, and I really like those. But I never ever take things for word of mouth just because people can say what they want to say, unless they have something to back it up. It's just a story. It's just something that's presented. You can take it or leave it. It's up to you. And so that's what that's about. So, all right. But, so if you're tuning in and you want to ask me questions about the book, or about the material we're reading through, if you hear something you're like, oh, well, I'm curious about that, then you can like ask the question in the comment section below, because I try to look at you're all over the place. I know, girl, this is my life. This is what happens when you have ADD or ADHD. So this is what happens. Yeah, so I will stop and I'll read and give commentary. I'll come back before I get off today to check your questions to see if y'all have some really good questions. I'm like you, Ferny. I literally have smorgasbord of spiritual on my nightstand books. Oh my god, it's like ridiculous. Look at you can see the collection that I have growing. I always tell my partner, like, I want physical books, even though I know it's wasting paper and it's just adding to waste. But I'm like, I want physical books because if there's an apocalypse and everything ends one day, at least I have some books to read until somebody comes and kills me. Like that's the mindset. That's just the crazy mindset that I have. But it's a joke. But it's like the world we live in. You just never know. I would like to have something to read if I'm going to have to deal with the reality of being disconnected. If something happens and the internet goes down, or I'm like, well, at least I have something to read to keep me busy for a while, right? So, all right. So let's start here. So the pain body. The greater part of most people's thinking is involuntary, automatic, and repetitive. It is no more than a kind of mental static and fulfills no real purpose. Strictly speaking, you don't think. Thinking happens to you. The statement, I think, implies volition. It implies that you have a say in the matter, that there is choice involved on your part. For most people, this is not yet the case. I think is just as false as a statement as I digest or I circulate my blood. Digestion happens, circulation happens, thinking happens. The voice in the head has a life of its own. Most people are at the mercy of that voice. They are possessed by thought, by the mind. And since the mind is conditioned by the past, you are then forced to reenact the past again and again. The Eastern term for this is karma. When you are identified with that voice, you don't know this, of course. If you knew it, you would no longer be possessed, because you're only truly possessed when you mistake the possessing entity for who you are, and that is to say, when you become it. For thousands of years, humanity has been increasingly mind-possessed, failing to recognize the possessing entity as not self. Through complete identification with the mind, a false sense of self, the ego, came into existence. The density of the ego depends on the degree to which you know what? As I'm reading this, and I'll stop for a second because I want to make a comment about this. As I read this, not to speak ill of Eckhart Tolle, because he's definitely a spiritual teacher of the generation, but he's very obsessed. as he's talking about people being mind possessed, he's very possessed or obsessed with the idea of making the ego out to be the worst thing ever. Meaning, like making the ego out to be evil, bad, devil, devil, whatever. He's very obsessed with it because he talks a lot about it. Now, granted, the book is about not feeling so connected to the ego and alleviating yourself from traditional suffering or forms of suffering and rising above that, which I understand that there's a point to that. But he's very obsessed with demonizing the ego, with demonizing the natural process that has existed since the beginning of humankind. And the process is we are supposed to identify with the human experience because it serves a purpose, even if we don't understand what that purpose is. And so the idea of not identifying or not feeling that attachment or connection, it's kind of going against the nature of why we come into physical forms. If you think of souls incarnating into physical bodies, the point of it is to have a human experience. And that includes having attachments and having unique awarenesses and perspectives and so forth. So think of it this way. If you think of being egoic or allowing yourself the egoic state of mind, it's no different than eating. It's no different than sex. It's no different than this or that. And so he's not speaking ill of sex. He's not speaking ill of eating because we all need to do it to survive in this physical world. We need to eat to survive. We need to drink water to survive. We need to, in order for our race to survive, we do need to procreate, I think there's enough of us on the planet, first, in my opinion, but, we need to procreate, right? To survive as a species, and for our genetic material to continue to evolve and to adapt and so forth. And so when you think of the ego, if you think of it that way and put it in that perspective, the ego is just another form of surviving in this reality. It is allowing us to have unique experiences. But it's just like when I read this, I'm like, you're really obsessed with really trying to like push that, like you're trying to like really knock the ego down, and quite consistently when you're talking about this. And I wonder if it's because maybe he's struggling, the writer, maybe he's struggling with a version of himself that is too human. I don't like myself because I have a desire. I don't like myself because I feel something. I don't like myself, or I don't choose I don't want to choose to be this. Because when you think of, detachment, I'm reading a book about the Buddha, about the teachings of the Buddha. So right here, Siddhartha. So I'm reading this and I'm reading this, then the Buddha. And the Buddha was actually very much like, there is joy. There are different versions of joy. There are different experiences of joy. And so he's not negating the experience of joy. It's when we become so consumed by the desire of needing to be in joy when we need to accept the moment and what is, because what is. It's like don't have a thought, don't have a feeling, don't associate with the ego. The ego's wrong. That's your worst enemy. That's your worst nightmare, the ego. And I'm just like, but use it. Just use the tool. Use the damn tool and use it the way it's meant to. But it's just when I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, you're really obsessed with like getting rid of the ego. So for thousands of years, humanity has been increasingly mind possessed, failing to recognize a possessing entity as not self. And he has choice words, possessing entity. Like, it's, again, if you are designed to do something, understand it and use it to your advantage. Don't negate it. We are designed to take a shit every day. Nobody likes that. That's not an enjoyable experience. Nobody really gets any joy from that. It's definitely not something that most people want to have to experience. We don't like that with each other either, for the most part, but we're not demonizing the act of using the bathroom. We're not demonizing it. It only comes to when you're dealing with the ego and how much, you have to think of the ego as like a friend who's always with you. And if you if the friend, if you give them too much, if you don't have those boundaries, then they definitely can take advantage of situations, which the ego does. The ego will take you to some hell of a place mentally, and it will definitely take advantage of the situation. But you have those boundaries. You got to set those boundaries up with your ego. So, through complete identification with the mind, a false sense of self, the ego, came into existence. The density of the ego depends on the degree to which you, the consciousness, are identified with your mind, with thinking. Thinking is no more than a tiny aspect of the totality of consciousness, the totality of who you are. The degree of identification with the mind differs from person to person. Some people enjoy periods of freedom from it, however brief, and the peace, joy, and aliveness they experience in those moments make life worth living. These are also the moments when creativity, love, and compassion arise. Others are constantly trapped in the egoic state. Again, assuming that if you're in an egoic state, you can't have those things. Yes, you can. We experience those kinds of pleasures and joys in the egoic state all the time. They are alienated from themselves as well as from others and the world around them. When you look at them, you may see the tension in their face, perhaps the furrowed brow, or the absent or staring expression in their eyes. Most of their attention is absorbed by thinking, and so they don't really see you, and they are not really listening to you. They are not present in any situation, their attention being either in the past or future, which, of course, exists only in the mind as thought forms, or they relate to you through some kind of role they play and so are not themselves. Most people are alienated from who they are, and some are alienated to such a degree that the way they behave and interact is recognized as phony by almost everyone, except those who are equally phony, equally alienated from who they are. Alienation means you don't feel at ease in any situation, any place, or with any person, not even with yourself. You are always trying to get home but never feel at home. Some of the greatest writers of the 20th century, such as Franz Kafka, Albert Camus, T.S. Eliot, and James Joyce, recognized alienation as the universal dilemma of human existence. Probably felt it deeply within themselves and so were able to express it brilliantly in their works. They don't offer a solution. Their contribution is to show us a reflection of the human predicament so that we can see it more clearly. To see one's predicament clearly is a first step toward going beyond it. The birth of emotion. In addition to the movement of thought, although not entirely separate from it, there is another dimension to the ego, emotion. This is not to say that all thinking and all emotion are of the ego. They turn into ego only when you identify with them and they take you over completely. That is to say, when they become I. The physical organism, your body, has its own intelligence, as does the organism of every other life form. And that intelligence reacts to what your mind is saying, reacts to your thoughts. So emotion is the body's reaction to your mind. The body's intelligence is, of course, an inseparable part of the universal intelligence, one of its countless manifestations. It gives temporary cohesion to the atoms and molecules that make up your physical organism. It is the organizing principle behind the workings of all the organs of the body, the conversion of oxygen and food into energy, the heartbeat and circulation of the blood, the immune system that protects the body from invaders, the translation of sensory input into nerve impulses that are sent to the brain, decoded there, and reassembled into a coherent inner picture of outer reality. All these, as well as thousands of other simultaneously occurring functions, are coordinated perfectly by that intelligence. You don't run your body, the intelligence does. It also is in charge of the organism's responses to its environment. This is true for any life form. It is the same intelligence that brought the plant into physical form and then manifests as the flower that comes out of the plant, the flower that opens its petals in the morning to receive the rays of the sun and closes them at night. It is the same intelligence that manifests as Gaia, the complex living being that is planet Earth. This intelligence gives rise to instinctive reactions of the organisms to any threat or challenge. It produces responses in animals that appear to be akin to human emotions, anger, fear, pleasure. These instinctive responses could be coordinated considered primordial. Back it up there. These instinctive responses could be considered primordial forms of emotion. In certain situations, human beings experience instinctive responses in the same way that animals do. In the face of danger, when the survival of the organism is threatened, the heart beats faster, the muscles contract, breathing becomes rapid in preparation for fight or flight. Primordial fear. When being cornered, a sudden flare-up of intense energy gives strength to the body that it didn't have before. Primordial anger. These instinctive responses appear akin to emotions, but are not emotions in the true sense of the word. The fundamental difference between an instinctive response and an emotional is this. An instinctive response is the body's direct response to some external situation. An emotion, on the other hand, is the body's response to a thought. Indirectly, an emotion can also be a response to an actual situation or event, but it will be a response to the event seen through the filter of a mental interpretation, the filter of thought. That is to say, through the mental concepts of good and bad, like and dislike, me and mine. For example, it is likely you won't feel any emotion when you are told that someone's car has been stolen. But when it is your car, you will probably feel upset. It is amazing how much emotion a little mental concept like my can generate. Although the body is very intelligent, it cannot tell the difference between an actual situation and a thought. It reacts to every thought as if it were a reality. It doesn't know it is just a thought. To the body, a worrisome, fearful thought means I am in danger, and it responds accordingly, even though you may be lying in a warm and comfortable bed at night. The heart beats faster, muscles contract, breathing becomes rapid. There is a buildup of energy, but since the danger is only a mental fiction, the energy has no outlet. Part of it is fed back to the mind and generates even more anxious thought. The rest of the energy turns toxic and interferes with the harmonious functioning of the body. I'll stop there because it's a good place to stop. Okay, so it's interesting that he's talking about the emotions. He's talking about how emotions can react to thought patterns and energy. Emotions can react to circumstances as well. And from experience, emotions also react to engagement with other energies like spirits and beings. And so my emotions can react to things like that as well. Have you ever felt a random burst of love out of nowhere and it almost wants to make you cry and you're like, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? But it doesn't feel like a sad emotion. It feels more like almost, the sense of like thinking back to something from your past that you really miss or enjoy, or just someone that you miss that you feel that connection to and you want to cry about them. Like that happens sometimes. And that's because sometimes when we're having those associations or connections with the spirit or loved ones in spirit, our brain doesn't know what else to do other than to either show us a memory or something we can relate to that associates with that type of energy, or an emotional response to that kind of energy, even if we can't put it into words. Same thing with like stuff going on in the world. Whenever there's a lot of crazy things happening or something is coming, a lot of people have an emotional response before the event shows up. And it's their psychic, their intuitive nature that is beginning to respond and get triggered, and they can't verbalize it. They can't put it into words. They don't understand what is behind that. That's also the same thing as well. Sometimes, when someone says like fight or flight response, the same mechanism is triggered when you are about to put yourself into a situation that is way out of your comfort zone, and your first response is to retreat or to go back to safety. It's the run to like react and go to safety, or walk straight into the thing that feels dangerous. The same feelings are there when you're doing something really incredible. Like when I was like doing that TV segment, I had the same feeling. Like my first response was back away, cancel, don't do it. You don't want to, you're scared, whatever. And I was like, nope, I'm pushing through it. Same thing as whenever I've given a speech or I've been in front of people or doing readings. I push through it every single time. I have to, because if I don't, then I am submitting to something that goes against the reality of what has been, and there's something new showing up that might be a pretty incredible thing for me. And so I have to push past that. And so that's, and you also have the same thing with heroes, guys, or individuals who are seeing a danger situation and they run right to danger to help people in the situation. That's the same response. That it's like, I'm going to push through the fear and try to do something about this. And so the same thing happens as well. So it can go both ways. So I know he's trying to come at it from one angle with the way he's describing the experience and the emotional response and all that other stuff, but it honestly can go both ways. And this is the thing: we live in a dualistic world. Everything here has it's positive and negative charge. The reason why we come here is because the ability for negativity to exist on that spectrum and represent it in forms and in experiences is part of the reason why we come here, because we can't understand through perspective, we can't gain through experience unless there is a contrasting opportunity. You can't tell light without the darkness. You can't tell what light is without darkness to be present. And if you have no idea what darkness is, you will always only understand light, and there's no variety of awareness within a spectrum there. There's no lessons, there's nothing gained. And so you have to have the dark in order for the light to exist. You have to have that balance. That's why we come here, physical world, because it gives us an opportunity to experience variety of darkness, variety of those lower vibratory states, variety of those lower vibratory experiences, state of minds, emotional centers. So all of that is here. That's why we come here. Some of us are really, really bad at managing that balance, and we get caught up in the emotional experience. We get caught up in those lower states, and it becomes our everything, and we suffer. We suffer tremendously, more than sometimes we should. If we can maintain a balance, for the most part, you can, give yourself an opportunity to experience and to elevate and be in a different state on a regular basis, even if you still have to go through dark periods or periods that are not enjoyable at all. So yeah, I think the seed of the soul. I remember reading that back when when Oprah was having the author on her show many, many years ago, and it definitely changed my perspective. The very first book that I ever read that changed everything for me was Sylvia Browne's The Other Side and Back, A Psychic's Guide to Our World and Beyond, because I saw her on Montel and I got the book, and I had to save up money for it because back then books were expensive. It wasn't really, Borders and those book places were just starting to get popular or trendy. And this is really before the internet was it wasn't the go-to place for information. It was a bookstore or a library, right? So, but I remember that book, and it kind of got me to open my eyes to different ideas. And then I started to read everything I could get my hands on after that. So I get the idea of like these like life-changing books. The other book that really changed everything for me was Conversations with God. That whole series, it completely shifted the way I thought about everything. And it helped me to understand some things I didn't even realize I was stuck trying to figure out or trying to work through. So, um, let's see. Remember, guys, no personal questions, only spiritual based questions. Yeah, Luz is like, I need to have paperback books. I'm old school. I'm totally old school myself as well. Totally old school. Let's go over here. Yeah, the book was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. That was the first spiritual book, because there's a whole lot. I mean, it's like a spectrum, right? Sylvia Browne's book was the first psychic based book, or it's about spirituality, but it talks about a whole lot of other things. I agree with some of it. I don't agree with some of it. But it was a really good book. I still have it. I love that book. It's one of my favorites. But the book was called The Other Side and Back, A Psychic's Guide to Our World and Beyond. I think that's what it was called. And so that's the first one. The second one is the one it changes everything. It's like a really thick book. It's called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. That's the second book. And that's the one that changed everything for me. Cassie, can you hear me now? Because nobody's saying that they can't hear. So, and I asked everybody if they could hear me earlier. So I'm not sure if it's so. Y'all can hear me, right? Want to make sure y'all got. Yeah, y'all want to make sure y'all can hear me, right? Cassie, turn up your volume. Turn up your volume, girl. That or you know how sometimes it does it where it doesn't come through. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I'm not really. When someone's too monotone or they sound lifeless, um, I just don't connect. I need the persona. I need the energy of the personality. And that's something that I struggle with, especially with a lot of established spiritual teachers, is they lack personality and they just don't feel like alive to me. They just don't, it's like a lack of like this life and vitality. And I'm like, we're here to live human lives. And so I don't agree with, I don't agree with becoming lifeless or like losing your personality. Like, could you imagine if I was not here as Ferny and instead I was like, you must find peace within yourself. If you don't find peace, everything will not work for you. It's important to hold love in the space of your heart. I mean, how boring is that? Like, how boring am I? I'm bored with myself. So I don't like it. I don't like it. It ain't going to work for me. So, and that's one of the things is like, I don't want to allow myself to get to that point because I went through that when I was younger. I used to, and this is what happens, right? When you start reading everything you get your hands on and just assume it's the gospel and then you meditate 4 hours a day, which is what I was doing, meditating 4 hours a day, you lose your personality. And I was really, really monotone, just always the same like emotional spectrum. Granted, you have a lot of peace, but you're also bored as hell, or you just, it's life ain't that enjoyable. You don't get a lot of joy in my opinion. I'm not saying that everybody should be crazy, whacked out like Ferny, but what I'm saying is allow yourself the human experience to some extent. Make peace with it. Make peace with the idea that you're a human being. It's okay to be human being. It's okay to have the human experience, including the experience of desiring food and to feed yourself, and getting joy from the experience of having food, the desire of wanting to have sex with others or engaging in a sexual act and getting joy from that. It doesn't have to be about procreation or the desire to express emotion. It doesn't always have to be these extreme or intense emotions. Just expressing emotion or experiencing emotion is okay. It's okay to be human. It's okay to use the ego as a version of yourself to understand things from a unique perspective, but never to allow it to run off or to not set those boundaries, because then you'll become, a really egotistical personality. And at that point, nobody likes you. Nobody likes an egotistic personality. Well, some people like egotistic personalities. You can build an entire cult around egotistic personalities. But for the most part, most people who understand what that leads to because they've had enough experience with egotistical people in their lives know that that is not healthy, and that's actually quite toxic, and that's probably going to lead to a lot of negative or unhealthy experiences to begin with. So there's so many versions of it. I mean, there's like you can call it different things. I mean, there's a conscious, super conscious. I mean, there's so many versions of like these different layers to ourselves. We exist and I believe we exist as three versions of ourselves at once. I exist as my primal nature, the very core human being that is just trying to survive. There's my primal nature, and the ego can be very connected and attached to that. And then there is the higher perspective, that version of me that is kind of a bit elevated from the human perspective, where it's kind of understanding things from that perspective, that objective kind of awareness and whatnot. And then you have a higher version of it, which I consider to be, our highest self, our soul, God, etc. You can throw all that into that same pile. So we exist as a combination of these three forms. Ferny is a combination of this like higher self with the primal nature, that mix there. And then from time to time, I bounce out of Ferny mode and then I bounce into God mode, because that's just what we all have access to. We can all access God and communicate with God and understand through God. And I use God as a term. I don't think of God as like a person. I think of God as like a experience, a awareness, perspective, an understanding, and experience a state of being. It's just I consider all different things representations of God. It's kind of hard to put it into words, but okay. I wonder if Cassidy fell asleep again. I know she's been working her butt off and she's probably tired, but I wonder if she fell asleep again. Maybe this is why you didn't hear anything, Cassidy, because you fell asleep and you ain't hearing nothing. Let's see. Oh, thank you so much for that. Thank you. Um, Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I'll do more Ferny time. I love Ferny times. I'll do more Ferny times. I want to do lectures and such, and I want to do like I want to actually. What I might do is I might revamp the study group a little bit to where I may also include. I may do something where it's going to be like one day is study group, the other day is like lecture, and it's more about me reading something inspirational that's inspiring to me, but it's also kind of cryptic or complex from some of the ancient scriptures, and then breaking it down and then applying it with a story, using a story in my life or my experience to help me understand this, so that you could look at your life and how that would apply to you. Because a lot of us, we are very much into like regurgitating spiritual words or regurgitating or reposting memes and all that great stuff, but a lot of people don't actually understand the messages or the information in the story. So, and I even got my little like head thing because I want to be, so that way I can, when I'm going to be doing the meditations and such, 'cause I want to incorporate that into a kind of like weekly like live that also, and I want to even include like some Zoom maybe in that or some videos, but do a live and talk about, give a lecture, read the text, the piece of the text that I'm feeling the connection to, and then expand on what that could mean, then use a story from my life, and then also come back to questions that might also tie into some of that as well. And then either beginning with the meditation or finish it with the meditation. That is the goal. So it's kind of like the structure of this is forming in my head, and it's been kind of collecting over the last few weeks. And so I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do it so that I can reach maximum amount of people without having to be on like 17 different platforms. But it would be easy just to be on Zoom and just to do it on that way. But it's not, it doesn't really work with like Instagram. It doesn't really work with like some of the other platforms because you can't really send out the signal. So you're basically all in one place, and it's just not going to work for me in that way. So, but I got my this, so I'm ready for it, because I'm definitely ready to go to that next stage there. And it's been summoning me for the last few months, and I'm like, okay, I know I need to listen at that point. So. But thank you for thinking of my mom. She's doing okay. She's actually, so most of the stuff is packed. We got her new apartment. Everything is pretty much set with the new place. Her move-in date is on the 20th, so I'm driving to Houston this weekend after my last appointment on Saturday, and driving to Houston, and then I am driving in. I'm gonna, as soon as I get in, I'm going to my partner's mom's house because I want to see her first before I see anybody else, just because she hasn't had her booster yet, and I don't want to put her at risk. And I'm literally not planning on engaging with anyone from here to Houston. So I'm gonna drive in, spend a few hours with her. I'm gonna nap at her house so I can get my energy back. Then I'm meeting my sister and my mom at the old apartment. Most of everything is packed. There's still a few more. There's still a bunch of stuff that needs to be put into boxes, which we've got. We've already seen like what we're going to be doing there. So that's pretty much that. And then after that, then we'll work on other details that we have to work out last minute. And then the movers come on Monday morning at 8. So I'm going to be there for them. And then they're going to come. They're going to get everything, and then they're going to take it to the new place, drop it off, and then I'll be meeting them at the new place with my sister and my mom, and then we'll be unpacking and getting her set up with the basics. But my mom is staying with my sister right now, so she's been staying with my sister for a couple of days already. So she'll be with my sister, I think, until maybe the beginning of February. My sister seems to be enjoying having that time with her. And I'm glad about that, because I grew up with my mom. My sister didn't. She lived next door to us, but she didn't think of mom as mom. She thought of her as just like the people who lived next door, because they were raised by my aunt. She was raised by my aunt. So, it's nice that she's having this time with her to be able to like have that more like quality one-on-one time with my mom. And my mom's being spoiled. My mom gets real chiflada. She gets real spoiled when she's with us, just because we do a lot more for her. as far as like cooking and just making sure she's comfortable. And so we do all of those things, and she enjoys that, so she's loving that. So I just talked to her earlier. She's like, because every time my mom doesn't know how to use a cell phone properly, and every time she struggles with a cell phone, I just get her a new one, just because maybe it's gonna be easier for her. So the first phone that she had, that one broke. She broke that one, I think. The second phone she got, I that one was a little more expensive, and after about a year, something was going on with the sound, so we just got rid of that one, and I got her a third one. So the third one has worked fine, but she doesn't know how to turn the volume up or down on this phone, and so whenever she's talking to people, she can't hear them, and so she's thought that the phone was broken. And so my sister, now that she's with my sister, I called her earlier, and she was like, I can hear you now. She's like, you don't have to buy me another phone. This one works. I'm like, yeah, it's just the volume, girl. It's just the volume. She's gonna turn up the volume, but I think I'm gonna get her a headset that might have like a volume switch, so she can just do it manually instead of trying to figure it out on the phone. So it's a little bit more difficult. But I'm also gonna get her one of those video camera things that you put in the apartment with Wi-Fi, because she's gonna have Wi-Fi where she's at, so that way she can see us video, and that way she doesn't always have to like try to figure it out on the phone. So that's what I'm planning on doing with that as well. Yeah, a professional with it. Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna go to that level, then I need to take it up a notch. So I need to, look the part if I'm gonna do it, Ray. Um, to Britney Spears. That's perfect for a spoof. So now I might include that in a spoof if I'm gonna do like a spoof with like one of the like alternate personalities that I like to play from time to time. I was gonna get a black one because I kind of wanted a black one, but they didn't have one. The black ones that I wanted were like a few $100s. I ain't spending on a few $100s on a microphone. I literally have too much crap in my closet, stuff that I've just spent money on that I haven't even used. So which I got to go through. So just it's just like, no, I don't want to spend more money on stuff that I don't need. I'm not gonna use. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, the thing about it is, Xtina, the thing about it is, that's what I would have wanted, just something Bluetooth related. But the problem with that is it looked too bulky back here and it looks just weird. And also, I also need to hear at the same time. And the only things I could find that were like that were really thin and small, but that had like that had audio in your ear, were these big old like, could bajunka sounding like big boombox, 80s 90s headphones. I'm like, I don't want something like that. I ain't playing games. I just want a little like something in there as well. So I have that, and then I also have my little earpiece. So like when I'm going to be on the camera for the show, the TV show that they're going to have me on, I've got my little thing. So I'll be like a reporter, like, coming to you live from Ferny's office. So it'll be back here. So it'll be that. And then I'll have the other piece right here. If for like, if I'm doing something with video and stuff, but if it's just for the other people, it may just be this right here. And then the microphone that I'm using right now, because that'll be plenty or my, lapel, so that it'll be all like, like I need to be set on Secret Service. I have a crazy idea. It's a TikTok for you. Message for some. I'm trying to work my TikTok up. I need 200 more people, and then I can go live and do readings for them as well. Because I need to get up in there. I've been watching some of these other psychics, and I'm just like cringy. I'm just like, like they're making me crazy. There are some people who are trying though. They are really trying to put it out there. Put it in the work for. I am gonna put the work in. I'm putting the work in. Reporting live. We're coming to you live. Oh man, let me do some research on heading headset aids. Sometimes it's even covered by insurance for your mom. Yeah, we're gonna get her ear thing, just because she's like deaf. My mother is like deaf as a bat. My grandpa was like that too. He had a hearing aid too, and I think I'm probably gonna end up being that way too. It's funny because I'm gonna be connecting to spirit, and then I'm gonna be able to hear the client. So they're gonna be talking to me. They're gonna show me like the number 27, and I'm gonna be like, yeah. So they're acknowledging the number 27, and then the person's mouth's gonna move. I'm like, what? Huh? And I'm going to hear Jack about the human person talking to me, but I can hear the spirit still. That's going to be some craziness right there. Craziness. What? My husband got 5K for peeling pulled eggs? What? What's a pulled egg? 5K? What? I don't. Boiled eggs, for peeling boiled eggs. I'm like, okay, but pulled eggs, I'm like, is that I was like, is that a flavoring? Is that a new, like, because reminds me of those eggs that they flavor with the stuff. So, Um, oh, oh, thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. So I'm gonna read it because it's sweet, and it's I appreciate it. So, hey friend, I just want to thank you for the email reading you gave me around this time last year. You told me what money I would get from civil court trial and when. It happened, and I am waiting for the class action suit you said I would buy my Harley Davidson cycle with. I think you said it would happen in 2020. You are the most spiritual person I've encountered. Thank you, and read this for others to hear. Oh, well, thank you, sweetheart, as proof. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes my timing is 1 year off, like exactly 1 year off. So, FYI, sometimes in my mind, when I'm tuning into the future, I'm trying to see it as like a time frame. So, for example, when I tell you, think of Christmas, you're not thinking of a year, you're just thinking of Christmas, and you're associating that with memories, right? Or with experience of Christmas. So whenever I'm tuning into the future and I start to see Christmas, I just assume it's in the year that I'm seeing it in. I never assume that it's ahead like a year or whatnot. So sometimes when I'm seeing certain things around certain times of the year, I just assume it's in the same year I'm reading. But sometimes I can be off by one complete year. Whenever I try to look ahead or scan time wise years, that's when it gets a little more accurate, just because I'm not trying to fixate on a situation within the year. I'm just fixating on like how many years it might take before something happens. So thank you for that, sweetheart. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yep. Joining volunteers. I'm trying to learn how to do TikTok, y'all. So I'm trying to get better at the TikTok stuff. No readings, mama. I'm sorry, baby girl. No readings right now. We're doing study group. See, we're doing like a study group. We're doing study group, and I'm just talking because it's been a long day. I It's been a long day, so I got some extra expenses coming down the line. With my mom, and so I had to like increase my workload. So today was like my old schedule. My old schedule used to be 10 to 15 readings in a day. My new schedule, because I was pushing myself too hard last year, my new schedule is around like 8 to 10. And so that's my new schedule. And so because of the extra expenses with my mom and everything, I had to like increase my workload for a little while just to get ahead. And so I'm doing like 15 to like 10 to 15 readings a day now. That's like private sessions. I'm talking about the private sessions. Then the lives are extra. The study groups are extra as well. So that's just the extra stuff. And then the e-readings as well. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to bust my ass for a little bit just to kind of get ahead so that way I can get some of these things taken care of for her. So not yet. She's moving on Monday. So Monday is her move date. But she'll still be with my sister. So her apartment literally, she won't even be in her apartment for another month, even after we move her. So, oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, people do not realize how much I do in readings. I read last year, which is my busiest year to date. Last year I did, what was the number? 1,600 readings last year. 1,600. That's 1,600 readings. And so that was last year. This year I reduced it because I didn't want to push myself so hard. So I was trying to reduce a little bit of it and increase e-readings. E-readings are really easy to do. I can do a lot of those in a shorter period of time to compensate for any changes in income level. And so I reduced the appointment load a bit just to give myself more of a chance. I put breaks in because I was never taking breaks. I was going literally, I was reading for 3 straight hours, taking a 30-minute break, and then reading for another 3 straight hours. And so I changed that for this year, where I read for about 2 hours, and then I give myself a 15-minute break, and then I do another hour. Then I have an hour break, and then I do another. So I gave myself more breaks. This year I gave myself more vacation days as well because I wasn't giving myself enough vacation days. But even still, it's like, it's like still a lot. So but that's what this is the reason why my ability works so quickly and I can get to it, because again, it's that old Starbucks mindset that I have where I had to knock out, oh shoot, someone just ordered 20 lattes, oh my god, and I have to get through it. And so for me, I can do it. It's just I've gotten more comfortable, and I wouldn't say lazy. I've gotten comfortable with a more leisurely pace, and so I reduced it because I was pushing myself too hard last year, and I was getting to the point where I was like, I'm like, overload, 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 and I had a lot of overloads last year. So this year I'm like, let's bring it down a little bit. But if I have to, I can do it for a while. I just have to make sure that I know my limits, and I try not to overdo it as much as I can. It is a lot. It is a lot. It's funny because used to read Sylvia Brown, or when I used to listen to her lecture, she's hysterical. By the way, have you ever heard a Sylvia Brown lecture back in the day when she was at the height of her career? She's extremely funny. She and I, this is probably where I get some of my personality traits from, because she had a lot of similar personality traits. She would just shit and damn and you get over it. She's like just a very no nonsense personality. And we all make mistakes as people, but I loved her lectures. But she used to say, whenever she wasn't on tour, she would do 10 to 20 readings a day at a stretch. And I was like, there's just no way. There's like no way, because when I first started, I was only doing like 3, maybe 4 readings in a day, and I thought that was a lot. And I was like, whoa, and I was exhausted and like completely like done for the day after 3 or 4 readings. Even my teacher Pam, she still does only like 3 or 4 if she's going to do 3 or 4 in a day, because she says past that it's like too much. But it just was like, I was really trying to like get this, the demand went up, and then it was just so much. So I was like, I'm just going to roll with it. And then so I got to the point where I was doing like 4 days a week. I was doing about 10 readings a day, 4 days a week. And I was like, I want another day off. So I stopped one day, and then I was doing 3, and I was doing 10 to 15 for the 3. And that worked really well because it gave me enough downtime to recover myself. But I also was able to get enough in to maintain the income levels that I need to support all the things that I do. So it was like, okay, so this is what I need to do. And it worked. It was fine. Like I said, last year was the most amount of readings I did in an entire year, which was about 1,600 readings. And that's not including the lives, that's not including the reading, the study groups, that's not including the e-readings. And so whenever I tell people, like, if you want to do this for a living, I can show you how to do this for a living and to do it well and to have a business to do this. I know what I'm talking about. And so I do, because I do enough readings on a regular basis to know how it's going to go and what you need to do to prepare yourself for the business side of it, protect yourself legally, because you got some crazy people out there, making sure you're clear with people so they don't use you and turn you into their god. Like, you have to handle it a certain way. There's a science to doing this as a business and as a reputable business with integrity. And that's the thing. A lot of psychics that I know who are out there, I'm going to be honest with y'all about it. More than 50% of the people who call themselves psychics who are offering services are complete con artists, or they're frauds. This is just the reality of the situation. And then within the 50% that aren't, a fraction of them are actually only doing a good job at it. And a fraction of those are doing and a fraction of those are doing above and beyond jobs with what they do. They stand out above the pack. So it just when you think of the numbers, that's why I tell people, go by reputation, go by reviews, go by, the proof is in the pudding. If someone calls themselves psychic, there should be proof there. So there should be validation there. Have they made public predictions? Have they done anything that shows their ability in one way, shape, or form? Don't just call yourself a psychic and you're just giving people life advice. Like, I want to see you do a reading. I want to see it. I want to know what it's going to be like. You should have something to back up your claims. And even if you put out 50 public predictions and you got 25 correct, the others were all wrong, you still have 25 predictions that you did well with. That's still more than most of what the industry is offering. That's most than what people are doing, showing their receipts. And so it's important to do that. So I'm glad you like this psychic training class. It can be, honestly, Miss Jenny, when it comes to psychic readings, a life reading, like talking about the future, that is actually not that draining for me. I can do that fairly easily. That doesn't take as much energy. It's the spirit communication. That is the most draining part of the work. It is also the part that has the most profound impact, because it does affect people in fundamental ways, but it is the most draining part of this work. That's why I limit how many I can do. So if I'm going to do, which I do lives on every day that I work, if I only allow myself 2 full, mediumship sessions in a workday, and I only allow so many in the week because there are days where I'm exhausted because I did too many mediumship sessions. So for me, if I were only going to be a medium and not do psychic readings, I could probably do 2 to 3 mediumship sessions in a workday every single day I work. That's but at the same, and those are the problem. And my partner was telling me, he's like, he wishes he could split me into 2 people because he says that's the most sought after service that I offer. And I'm like, I understand, I get it. The problem is that that's the one that requires so much more work, so much more effort, so much more. I want to do it. I want to help people with that, but it's also the thing that requires so much from me. And so for me, the psychic reading part, that's like doing math equations in my head. That's pretty simple for me, and I have it down to a science as far as that. Every mediumship session is unique and different unto itself, and some people, they understand the information and they get everything that I'm saying. Some people don't have enough of a backstory to some of the things coming through that they have to in the moment of people, which is why these are recorded, because people can go back and listen to what I said, and that way they can ask people. Some people, they go in thinking that they're going to have a specific experience because they only see highlights or edits from shows like, Teresa Caputo said, how do you connect with Ring? And the woman's crying and breaking down. She's like, how, and so that's the expectation, is that every single thing that comes out of my mouth in a mediumship session is going to be perfectly understood, is going to make perfect sense, or is going to be applicable directly to the things they want to work on themselves from the passing. And what I tell people is that should be a part of it, but it won't be 100% of what you're going to experience. There's a lot of stuff you're not going to know, a lot of stuff you may not realize in the moment, a lot of stuff that is true and factual, and you just completely missed it because you didn't even realize what I was talking about. And it happens all the time. And that's why I tell people, this is where they're recorded, so you can go back and figure out some of those details. But yeah, it's a lot of work with mediumship. And that's the thing that just takes so much effort. And that's what causes me to get sometimes headaches, because I push myself too hard. So that's why I have to limit those as well. So that's why those are booked out right now a little bit further versus psychic readings, which aren't booked out as much, because I do a lot more of those much more quickly. So I know, Jenny, I know a lot of people on IG, on Instagram, and also you have people, this is something that me and Cassidy have been talking about, because we know of people, and we've seen people who promote themselves as professionals in the industry, who call themselves like, I'm the celebrity psychic. Okay, well, what celebrities have you read for, and where's the video of you reading for them? They don't have it, or I'm a investigator and I do missing persons cases. Okay, what cases did you work on? Do you have anything to validate that? And so with missing persons cases, it's not an easy thing, because first of all, police officer, if you're going to be paid by the police department, and they do hire psychics in some instances, but that can't be on the books because it's money, and so they have to go about it in a unique way as a consultant or something like that. I don't charge working with police officers, because I'm like, if I can figure it out for y'all and I can give y'all the information, I'll do it. Pam, she does it differently because that's all she does, and so that's her area of expertise. So she works with a lot of police departments, and I learned this from Pam, is every time she works at the police department, she collects a patch of the police department she worked with, because that's a badge of honor, and the police department usually feels very honored that you would want their patch. So I've collected some patches, so I have my proof. But usually with missing persons, and I don't like missing persons cases either, I do not enjoy working on those, which is, I'm glad I don't have to work on as many of those on a regular basis, because it is very taxing, and it is also just it's very intimidating, it's very taxing, but also people are going through it with their loved ones missing, and it's really hard to deal with. So that's just an even extra layer of, I spent, on one case that I worked on, my best friend and I, we went to this wooded area in part of Texas, and there's just nothing out there. And we were dressed up, and we were like going through like trees and stuff. You'd think, oh, like near water, like, oh, geez, like that totally narrows it down. No, like there's water here, there's water there, there's water. Like, I'm going to need you to be more specific. So I like to draw maps. And what ends up happening is, whenever I'm tuning into a missing person and I'm trying to figure out the location, or a location that could potentially tie in to where they could be, what I end up seeing is I end up seeing big features of that area as far as like markers. For example, like if I'm drawing like a road, then I'll draw another road and then railroad tracks. So I try to like get it into like a where there's three sides to it so that I can kind of pin it down to a generalized area. And then that's where it gets even more complicated because you can generalize things into a 1 mile area. But if it's a wooded area, oh hell no, you're still not gonna be able to find someone if it's a wooded area like that. It is so I saw so many snakes and things. I was like, oh hell no, like I was not about to play with those snakes. So and I got pictures of us like in the woods and everything trying to and we found evidence that day, which was cool because it helped to affirm what I was telling the officers that I felt that she was there, the person that was missing in that case. But and so we found her stuff in that wooded area, my best friend and I. So that was like, because sometimes when you work with officers or you try to get someone to look in an area and they don't find anything, it is heartbreaking because you want to help and you know what you're seeing, but there's only so much you can do. And, the assumption is that if I'm tuning in, I'm going to find a body. That isn't the case. That isn't always what's going to happen. You're probably going to not find anything or you're going to find something, but it may not be what you're looking for. And so it gets complicated and people don't realize how much work it actually is. And so it's not the easiest thing to have to do. But, in that specific case, we found evidence because I kept saying that I felt she was there and the officers thought she was in a lake. And I was like, I don't feel she's in the lake. I feel she's in this specific area because I had drawn a map and then the map was correlating to where the area was that I was fixated on. They didn't think she was there. I thought she was there. And then the first time I went out, it was very intimidating because the officers, they literally, this was my first missing persons case is what it was, dealing with officers. Very intimidated. They literally thought I was going to get there and I was going to walk straight up to the body and said, here she is. It don't work that way. It's not like you have a grid in your mind of every single thing that's coming along. I had dreams. I had details. So what happened was I had gotten a missing persons case, and first of all, what I do before I even I always tell people if it's I have to work with the family directly or with the officers or detectives involved, because if they're not asking me for help, I'm not going to insert myself into something that I wasn't asked to participate in. So I wait to be asked. So if I'm asked by the family directly or asked by the officers, then I will get involved. And usually if a family asks me, but they don't know if the officers or detectives are willing to work on it, what I do first is I do an assessment of the situation. So all I ask for is just a picture of the person so I can see their face. And that's it. That's all I really ask for. And then I ask for that. And then that's it. So I start from there. And what I try to figure out is what I learned from Pam is the who, what, whys, whens, and wheres. Meaning, who does this involve? Who is this about? Who is the person that this is about? What happened? What may have happened? What occurred to this person? Why? What are the motivations? What was the motivating factor behind the missing the missing event or the murder? When did this potentially take place? Even if it's not like a time of year, night, early day, whatever. Where would this have been around, or markers or things that are features that are recognizable? And so, and also the suspects. So you have to break it down into the different sections, and then you have to kind of tune in and pick up on any specific details or correlating bits and pieces of information. So I usually put together a report. I put that report together. It takes me a bit to get around to doing it just because I don't like working on missing persons cases. So I have to force myself to do it. So I do it. I put the report together. I break it down as best as I can with very specific details, and then I send it to the family or whoever has asked me to do it. Usually it's the family, and I let them know, hey, these are the details I've gotten or what I'm getting from the situation. If this correlates to what y'all know and what's not been made public, or what the officers or the detectives know, and you can send it to them, because they don't always tell the family what's going on. They usually will hold back just because it is an active investigation, and that tends to be the case in a lot of instances. So I always tell them, if this matches up to what y'all know, then send it to the detectives and see if it piques their interest. If it piques their interest, they're going to call me. At that point, we'll set up a time for a call or a video conference or whatever, and then I will try to go into as much more detail as I can and possibly try to pinpoint a place or location. And so that's how I do it. And of course, when I say, I'm going to pin down a location or place, I don't just open up the world, because that's a lot of territory to cover. I just ask, where's the last known location that they were seen or they were known to be at? And I start there, and then I work my way out to see if there's anything that I could correlate to what I draw in my head. Because I draw a map in my head. It's a 3-part map of where I think this person might be. And then I ask where the last known place that they were at. And then I try to see if I can find something that correlates or parallels each other. Sometimes I have. Sometimes there have definitely been identical things to what I'm seeing. But then there have been instances where a person's like, well, we looked there, she's not there. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. So it's like, it gets complicated because it may be a part of the puzzle. It may not be the end result or the end goal. And so that's why it's hard. Like I got a guy who I had a reading for a few weeks ago, and they're trying to find his father because his father murdered his mother. And so I was trying to get information to help them locate the father, but the father's in Mexico. And so they're in the States and the father's in Mexico. And so all I asked for is a picture of the father and then the last known location. And I didn't even look at what he had sent me. I didn't even look at the picture, but I was already seeing something in my mind before I got the email back from him. And what I was seeing is I kept seeing a manufacturing area, an area where there's manufacturing plants or a manufacturing thing. I felt like this was close enough to a coastline, because I felt like I was not that far away from the beach. So I felt like this area was near a coastline, and I feel like there's someone who lives in that area that either is connected to the father or that is connected to the family, that they would be able to associate. And I feel like the father would be tied to that person, possibly even working at the manufacturing place or the mechanic. It's because I kept thinking mechanical manufacturing. It turned out that the father he had a mechanical background, so he was a mechanic at some point in his life. And he responded back with a picture, and then he told me of 2 places that the father was last known to be. The last known place, the first one was a last known place. The second place was where family was at in Mexico. But the first place that he was last known to be was exactly matching up to what I had seen in my mind, which was, it was an area close enough to the coast that you could pretty much drive there within an hour or so. So it was pretty damn close. So that's what I'm like, that's got to be it. And so at that point I told him, okay, this is what you're looking for. This is what I would suggest looking for to see if they can locate him. So well, yeah, a lot of people. I mean, the thing about it is, like, there are people who are very intuitive, but they only give life advice or they generalize it. You got to be specific. You got to be specific. If you're going to do anything, if you're going to stand out, and for those people who want to be psychics and want to get on TV or whatnot, if you want to stand out, you got to be specific. If you cannot be specific and you're only going to be generalized, then you're not going to make it very far. All of the psychics that I've seen who get too general tend to not make it very far. The psychics who are very specific, like Sylvia Brown, she at the height of her career, she was actually really, really good. And she was very specific on many occasions. People just want to focus on the things that she got wrong or the mistakes she'd made, but she was very good when she was on it. John Edwards, another very well-known psychic and medium, mostly medium, who's very specific as well. So you have people who are very specific, and you have people who are just too general. And the general ones don't make it too far. Now, granted, now that we live in the era where you've got mediums like Teresa Caputo and Tyler Henry and stuff like that, it's a whole nother generation of mediums and psychics. But it's kind of like, it's just there's a disconnect between like Teresa Caputo and like John Edward. Like if you look at them and how they've operated and what they say and what comes through, it's interesting because you can see the big differences there. But it's still, but she's still specific enough in enough instances that she stood up above the rest. And then of course her personality compensates for a lot. Cause you don't have a personality, then you ain't gonna make it in the TV industry. So you have to have a personality. Yeah. What do I think of people who dream of things to happen? That's just like precognitive. Everybody does it. Remember, everybody's psychic. Everybody has the same level of ability, same capacity or same abilities that I have. So I'm a clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. I have everything. I have the whole spectrum. I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. I have all of the psychic abilities, and I use pretty much all of my abilities, because I taught myself how to, and I learned that, which is what I teach my students. But people who dream things, it's precognition. It's precognitive dreams. A lot of people have precognitive dreams. It's a thing that a lot of people do experience. You can increase the ability to do it, but you can't control it. When it comes to psychic dreams, that's a whole nother story. The closest example of a medium or a psychic with dreams is the show Medium that's based on Alison Dubois, which is funny because the actual character on the TV show is very different from the actual character in real life. They're not the same type of personality, but Alison Dubois, the character, I actually love the actress, Patricia Arquette. I love her as an actress in that show, but that show was very good at helping you to understand how cryptic and how complex messages and dreams can be when they're psychic or they're medium in nature, so mediumship in nature. So that's a very good example of that. Shows that crack me up that are just full of it are like shows like Ghost Whisperer. Granted, I love Jennifer Love Hewitt, and I saw that show because it made me cry so many times. I was like, oh, Jennifer, tell him, Jennifer, tell him. Like I was crying with that show, but it was nothing like what it really is in real life. And so when I saw that show, I'm like, girl, you cannot speak verbatim for what a spirit is trying to tell you. Like it ain't gonna come through. I don't know where people got the idea that that's a reality, because it isn't. It isn't. Yeah. All right, guys, I'm getting to the end of my time. So I got to get to getting because I'm hungry and I got to get to getting. So, all right, guys, I love you all, and I will be back Friday, right? Yeah, I'll be back Friday because I'm doing a normal live Friday. So I love you.